Dr. Mollie Marti, and welcome to Resiliency Matters. This is where we take the big resiliency research and best practices and break it down into small, bite-sized pieces that you can begin using immediately to strengthen yourself and others. What if you could learn the connection between resiliency and creativity and how to nurture both? Would you spend the next 28 minutes with us? What if in the next 10 minutes you could hear the story of a community leader who went from Harvard Law School to having to relearn how to read, and how this personal trauma shaped his whole perspective on our ability to heal ourselves and others? Would you hang out with us? Who is us? Meet my other half today, Chuck Peters, president of the Gazette Company. Chuck is an innovator in our community. He is a collaborative leader, and he is very well positioned to talk community resiliency. You may be surprised and inspired by his personal experience of overcoming adversity. Welcome, Chuck.
Right. Thank you, Molly.
So you are an Iowa boy. I know you take great pride in
Yes.
Iowa.
Yeah.
Tell us about the journey to Harvard Law School.
Well, I grew up in Fort Dodge, Iowa, and my father was an attorney, uncle was an attorney, whole family was attorneys.
Okay.
They always said, do anything but practice law. So I went to University of Iowa, and studied sleep research, which was the hot topic at the time. But then there was no funding for that. And one of the things that I had developed was I was a really good test taker. So, got good test scores, got good grades, could apply to Harvard Law School, did. It was just after Watergate, and I thought, that's the place to be, in Harvard Law School.
Okay. And what was your experience at Harvard Law?
Well, it was, first of all, a really wonderful experience to start. People from all over the world, about 500 people coming together, and got to meet all kinds of diverse people and have wonderful experiences. Did well in the first semester. And in the second semester, took a property class where the professor really wanted to focus on why is there property. And I said, we're lawyers. We deal with property, right? What are we having this discussion for? Well, that discussion went on for about 3 weeks. And in frustration, after class, I was doing a handstand on the desk. Just total frustration in the winter, and ended up being asked by my classmates to show them some other great gymnastics I had done. So I did a backflip into a headstand and smashed my head on a concrete step.
So how did that injury impact you?
Well, immediately when it happened, I knew that I was severely stunned and I should rest. So I did what you should not do. I immediately went home and went to bed. Don't ever do that after a head injury.
Right.
But went to bed at noon and woke up at 8 o'clock the next morning with severe nausea, blurred vision, could not stand up, and had slurred speech, a terrible headache, terrible ringing in the ears, knew I was severely ill, and my wife of basically 18 months took me to the emergency room where they did a new technology at the time, a CAT scan, and determined that I had a subdural hematoma in the back of my head that had caused my brain to basically shut down.
So what did the recovery look like, or the medical treatment on that?
Well, the first thing was, do we need to drill a hole in your head to relieve the pressure? That was the big question. So I was in the hospital for about 3 days while they determined that. And then I came back every week for another CAT scan to see whether the swelling was going down. But in that time, which was about a month, I still had the blurred vision, the ringing in the ears, the headaches, and the inability to stand up for any length of time.
And we talk about the importance of support structures. What was going on with your family at that time, or additional support networks?
Well, my wife was very supportive, but we were pretty much new people in Cambridge, Massachusetts. I had a few friends at law school that were extraordinarily supportive. The law professors were very supportive. Frankly, the medical profession was not that supportive. I was being treated by neurosurgeons who were very concerned about the physical aspects of things, but I got absolutely no counseling, which is still kind of astounding to me today. That it was all, well, you've been hurt and it'll take a while to get better, and it's going to be like peeling an onion and you'll eventually get better.
And we do a lot of talk and teaching to support our educators, but I think that is such an important point. I've had personal experiences where a doctor has been more cold and bedside manner and more official, and I've had doctors after severe losses who've said, you'll always have this, and tuck it away in your heart, and I felt understood. I felt that compassion. So, as an aside, that. How many years later has this been? Decades later, you can still remember how you were being treated.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So I think that's such an important point for our audience here too, to just take that moment to realize it is how we make others feel, not what we say to them all the time or what we do for them, but how do you make them feel? Now, we've talked about, you've come across research later in life that kind of helped you understand your recovery. And one of those researchers, I believe, is Marianne Wolf. What is her work?
Well, Marianne Wolf is a researcher at Tufts University who, using the latest brain imaging technology, has pretty well shown that we are genetically designed or constructed for oral language, but we do not have existing neural structures for reading. That each individual is creating their own neural network to allow them to read. So in my recovery, I could not read a paragraph and comprehend it. So it took me almost a year to be able to stand up regularly without falling down. And it was over 2 years before I could even begin to try to read a paragraph and comprehend it. And then in doing that work, that was the hardest work I've ever done in my life. And I kept wondering, did I do it correctly? Right? Have I really learned the correct way to do things? But then her work was so freeing for me to say, there is no correct way to do it. We are each individually creating our own neural networks that enable us to read print automatically.
So play to your strengths, find your own way forward is what you're saying. And how has that impacted how you try new things in your life or how you encourage others to try new things?
Well, a line a friend of mine uses often is, it's impossible or it's obvious. Right? So for a long time in learning to read, it just seemed like the hardest thing ever, and then it started to flow. I've had other experiences, learning to fly a plane, learning to dance. I use learning to dance often because I was known as not a dancer. And my whole family laughed at my dancing capabilities. When I was asked to do a Dancing for the Stars charity function, and decided to go outside my comfort zone and said yes, my family said, is there a dance where you can stand there and then move awkwardly? And for the first 6 or 7 lessons, I just could not get it. And finally the instructor just said, hey, people can do this. Just pay attention and visualize this and you'll be able to do it. And eventually it came.
What a great story of perseverance. So there's tool number 1, nurture hope that recovery from trauma is possible, and then keep persevering. What is the connection between growing yourself and growing others? Stay tuned to find out.